Manx Radio's Update with Beth Espy.
Well, first of all, good evening. Welcome to Update, your daily news roundup. Everything you need to know in under 30 minutes, which tonight includes pay disputes on the Isle of Man. How likely are they to be sorted out anytime soon? Well, the chair of the Public Services Commission hopes so. We'll also hear tonight about the public sector rent increase that's been announced today. And later, how students from St Ninian's High School are supporting children in war-torn countries. We'll also keep an eye on the roads and the weather as well. There's a new weather warning that's just come into force. I'll tell you all about that in a moment. And if you spot anything when you're out and about on the roads and you can let us know, that'd be great. Text 166 177 or email studio@manxradio.com. We'll start with a look at today's main news headlines with Lewis Fastamai.
Starting with that news from the Isle of Man Fire and Rescue Service, officers are currently attending a structure fire on Peel Road in Douglas. In the last half hour, the road between the Brown Bobby and Athol Street has been closed. Motorists are asked to avoid the area. We'll bring you any further information on that situation as soon as we hear it. Public sector rent on the Isle of Man will rise by 5% from April. The Department of Infrastructure says housing providers are facing the challenge of providing affordable properties for rent while accommodating the high cost of services, including planned and capital maintenance. The mountain road is to stay closed until at least midday tomorrow, following further snowfall overnight. The Department of Infrastructure has had snowplows and gritters along the route today. And in sport, Isle of Man tennis player Billy Harris won his opening match in qualifying for the Australian Open. The 29-year-old beat Japanese player Yuta Shimizu 6-7, 6-4, 6-4 in the first round this morning. Harris will face Spain's Carlos Taberna in the second qualifying phase tomorrow. In the latest international news, people have been rescued from a submerged caravan park after danger-to-life flood warnings were issued for parts of Leicestershire. Heavy rain and melting snows caused the river to overflow at Barrow-upon-Soar. The weather's also causing travel disruption, with trains, roads and flights all affected. Fact-checking programs on Facebook and Instagram are being scrapped. It's a major reversal of parent company Meta's policies. Boss Mark Zuckerberg says the company will focus on restoring free expression.
The problem with complex systems is they make mistakes. Even if they accidentally censor just 1% of posts, that's millions of people. We've reached a point where it's just too many mistakes and too much censorship.
And a prosthetic leg and a hamster are among the things Northern Rail passengers have left on its trains. The operator says it's collected 32,000 lost items since July 2022. Those are the headlines. I'll be back with the news at 6 o'clock.
Thank you very much indeed, Lewis. Who leaves their hamster on a train? Now, the weather brought to you by Manx Glass and Glazing. And I did mention that yellow weather warning. It's just come into force. It's actually in place until midday on Friday. That's the 10th of January. It's for frost and ice. Most places at first of frost and ice risk, apart from along Windward Coast. So it's most places around the Isle of Man that might be affected. The main forecast for this evening, occasional wintry showers. That'll be mainly in the north of the island. Still the risk, though, of a few passing showers in central and southern areas this afternoon and evening. Some sunny intervals there were earlier, but there was also that fresh to strong northwest wind, and it did feel quite cold. It was around 5 Celsius. Those showers are going to slowly die out tonight. The winds will fall light, and then there is that risk of ice developing on surfaces that remain damp, and that is the same tomorrow morning. So just be aware of those risky icy patches as you drive into work tomorrow. Some good clear sunny spells tomorrow, though. Only isolated wintry showers, light northerly winds, and temperatures will be around 6 Celsius at best. Sunset this evening was at 4:15. Sunrise tomorrow morning 8:35.
Manx Glass and Glazing can supply and install single, double and triple glazing. Call 674 573 or visit the showroom on the Snugborough Trading Estate.
TE Carbon provide new memorial stones, grave renovations, new inscriptions and fire hearths. Visit us at Hope Street, Castletown, or at Broadway, Douglas, or call 844 440. TE Carbon, here when you need us.
Most builders start with a hammer and saw. Manx Construction start with ideas and imagination. For new build, extension or home office, Manx Construction offer full service from planning to completion. Call Tony on 452 688.
We all need peace of mind. That's where Peace of Mind Manx Will Writing Services can help you. From just £149 plus VAT. Call 671 001 or go to peaceofmind.co.im.
At Bond Fabrics, we're not just a fabric shop. As well as curtains and upholstery and dress and costume fabrics, we've knitting and crocheting wools, made-to-measure curtain and blind service, plus poles and tracks. Visit Strand Street, Douglas, call 611856 or see bondfabrics.im.
You're listening to Update here on Manx Radio FM. It's just gone 5.5 minutes past 5. Now, the new chair of the Public Services Commission, Rob Callister, says he's keen to settle the ongoing dispute with the unions as quickly as possible. Now, Prospect and Unite, the trade unions representing public sector workers, rejected 3 pay offers under the previous chair, Kate Lord-Brennan. The unions are concerned about a proposed 3-year deal, which includes gradually decreasing pay rises. Well, Rob Callister told Christian that resolving the issue is one of his top priorities.
Well, at this moment of time, I've only had one very brief conversation with the union. That was more of just an introduction. I will be speaking to the unions in the new year, along with the Director of Human Resources, who's actually leading the negotiations, not myself. So at this moment in time, I've not actually had any proper conversations with the unions. That will take place in the new year. But I do have to respect that process going on in the background. I do want this resolved as quickly as possible for everyone involved, because we do value our workforce within the Public Service Commission and right across government, and they do deserve to be paid a fair wage. But we also have to acknowledge, any increase that may also affect frontline services, and we have to be very careful on that. We have to get this balance right.
I mean, you're obviously just coming into this, but what's your take on the union's concerns?
Well, I need to listen to them. All I've heard so far is what's been published in the media. I've not actually sat around the table with the unions and actually listened to their concerns and hopefully find a solution. That will happen in the new year, and I will work with the unions. I will have meetings with the unions as many times as they need someone to listen to them, but I also have to be respectful that the lead negotiator on this will be the Director of Human Resources and not myself as the political chair for the Public Service Commission.
You will have influence over that, though. So, I mean, can we see the scrapping of the percentage increase in favour of a sliding scale? There would be no 3-year deal, is what the unions want. They also want a revision of the pay and lose system too. Do you see any of those changing?
Well, at this moment in time, as I say, I've only been in the post a couple of weeks. I need to sit down. I need to listen to the union firsthand. I need to take on board everything they're saying. Obviously, then I've got to speak to Human Resources, who represent or are trying to represent the Manx government at the same time as the employer. And we have to find a compromise and we have to find a solution. And hopefully that will be done very early on in 2025, both for in order for the staff to get on with the valuable job that they do on behalf of the people of the Isle of Man, but also politically and with budgets around the corner, obviously being reset in April. We need to have this resolved as quickly as possible.
Rob Callister, the new chair of the Public Services Commission, talking to Christian there. You can hear the full interview at manxradio.com. Well, it's not just the PSC involved in pay disputes with its workers. Just before Christmas, Manx Care heard its doctors had voted in support of industrial action. Now, the British Medical Association's members have been asking for a 12.6% uplift. Manx Care says doctors do deserve a fair pay rise, but also stresses it has to stay within its budget. Both parties have said they'll be holding further talks in the new year. So just what will happen next? Well, Sean Crerand and Prakesh Thiagarajan are two of the BMA's representatives on the island. They've been talking to Sean.
A credible offer. By that, I mean an offer at least as good as that in the other British Isles that is acceptable to all our members.
I know previously you've said 12.6%. Is that still the uplift you'd be looking at?
That's what we're asking for, but we would expect something close to that. And if we want to look around the British Isles, their pay offers for 23-24 have been anything from 10.5% to 11.26%. I don't think any of us is going to say no to a comparable offer.
I know you said the strike action would need to get underway within around 5 weeks. In terms of what impact that would have on services on the island, 121 doctors voting in support, what would that look like for health services on the island?
We obviously would try and minimize any impact on patient safety. However, the patient experience is likely to be affected. Having said that, we really need to talk to the wider membership before deciding what exact action to take.
And we think the patient experience is at the moment detrimentally affected by, as Prakash said earlier on in the interview, by the fact that recruitment is a problem, retention is a problem, having a satisfied and motivated workforce is a problem. All of those reflect on our ability to provide a useful and safe patient care. So really, in the long term, this will, if the negotiations are successfully concluded, it will in fact help patient care, because we'll have a much more satisfied workforce, we'll have a much more motivated workforce, and all of that, as you well know, will help the delivery of care.
That's two of the BMA's representatives here on the island talking to Sian. We did get a statement from Manx Care. You can read it in full on our website. They say, "We recognise the invaluable contribution of our doctors and believe they deserve a fair pay rise. However, we must manage our finances and stay within our budget." For the next year, they say, government has been clear there will be no additional funding beyond what's already been allocated. Spending more than what's been allocated for pay rises would mean reallocating funding from other services, potentially leading to cuts or service reductions. As I say, the full statement you can find on our website. It's coming up to 12 minutes past 5. Let's bring you the details now of that breaking news that came in late this afternoon. Public sector rent on the Isle of Man is going to rise by 5% from April. Lewis is with me now in the studio. So, Lewis, why has this all come about, do we know?
Yeah, so the Department of Infrastructure says this follows consultation with the island's 15 local housing authorities. What it means is those living in a one-bedroom property will see a weekly difference of £3.71 from the 7th of April. People occupying a four-bedroom property will see a weekly difference of £7.71. Infrastructure Minister Michelle Haywood says the importance of maintaining and developing the island's stock of more than 6,200 public sector properties has been a key factor in considering this year's rise, while balancing concerns around affordability for tenants. She's thanked local authorities for their input on this issue and says she looks forward to further positive engagement on housing matters over the coming year.
OK, so what does this mean for tenants whose rent is paid by the government as part of their benefits?
So those tenants will automatically have their support reassessed to take into account the new rental costs. Anyone who believes they will struggle to meet their financial obligations is asked to contact their housing provider. The DOI does say included in this year's price review is an increase of the total rental income providers are able to use for both maintenance, which is rising from 30% to 32.5%, and administration, which rises from 6% to 7%. And you can find all those details just discussed over at manxradio.com.
Lewis, thank you very much.
Manx Radio Travel, driven by Quayside Tyres and Service Centre.
Well, the main thing to look out for on your way home, as Lou mentioned in the news, is the fact that the Fire and Rescue Service is still dealing with that structure fire on Peel Road in Douglas. That was announced around about 45 minutes ago. So the road between the Brown Bobby and Athol Street has been closed. You need to avoid that area, find another way home. I know it's tricky, isn't it? The mountain road's closed. It's really busy everywhere, but just be aware it is going to take a little bit longer, possibly, if that's where you normally go. Looking down at the airport, all okay for the rest of the flights today, and the latest from the steam packet. The Manxman left Heysham at just about 2:15, expected in at 6 and heading out again at 8:30.
Ask how you can spread the cost interest-free at Quayside.
You're listening to Update here on Manx Radio. It's just coming up to 5:15. Now, a Ramsey MHK says being a commissioner gives people a better understanding of Manx politics. As we've been talking about, the local authority elections are being held in April this year, and Laurie Hooper is strongly recommending people to go down this avenue before attempting to become a member of the House of Keys. Of course, a general election for the House of Keys coming up in 2026. He's been talking to local democracy reporter Emma Draper.
Difficult, in a word. There's a lot of competing demands on you as a commissioner. I think there's a bit of a misunderstanding out there about what local authorities and commissions actually do compared to what government does, and I still see that in my roles in MHK today. So housing is a really good example of that. Local authorities predominantly are the ones that run our housing systems, and yeah, as an MHK I still get a lot of people coming and talking to me about local authority housing and related issues. So there's a bit of a misunderstanding there. There's also some real limitations on what you can and can't do as a commissioner. Again, flipping it on its head, there's loads of things you want to be able to do, but actually those responsibilities sit with the Department for Enterprise, Department of Infrastructure. They sit with national government, so it's a bit restrictive in some ways. But I always found that there were lots of things you could do. So despite some of those restrictions and despite some of those misunderstandings, it was always possible to get things done, to actually start driving some of the change and some of the improvements that you were looking for. But it is quite rewarding to be in that position, to be able to help, to be able to make decisions, to give back. But you have to be willing, I think, to commit some time and energy to it, because that's the horrible truth, I suppose, of anything politically related, is you can make decisions, you can make a difference, but it does involve you putting your head above the parapet a little bit and trying to make a difference. And I think that's where a lot of people will struggle, as where I'd certainly struggled to start with, was actually having the confidence to be able to stand up and say, actually, I know I'm only one voice out of 12 voices around the table in Ramsey, but I have been elected, and it really is on me to make sure my voice is heard. And it's challenging, actually.
So if someone is thinking about being an MHK, would you recommend being a commissioner first?
I actually would quite strongly recommend that, not because I think you have to be a commissioner first, I don't think it's necessary, but I think it gives you a real grounding in things that maybe you haven't had a lot of exposure to and experience with, especially so from where I am from the private sector going in. I wouldn't have had a lot of engagement necessarily with public sector bodies other than regulators. So actually getting in at that level and actually trying to understand a bit more about how public services are delivered, some of the pitfalls that you're going to run into, the way local government works, the way national government works. If you are thinking, you know what, in 5 or 10 years maybe I'd like to run for the House of Keys, actually you should really look at local authorities first, because in the intervening period it is voluntary. You can do it alongside your day job. I did, most people do, and you can do that whilst still trying to learn the ropes, as it were, get an understanding. You do get a lot of those connections, you get a better understanding. It really helps you build a good grounding. But on the flip side of it, I don't think you want everyone who's an MHK to have had to go through that process. I think some people already know a lot about this stuff, they've got a lot of experience, and they think actually they can go straight into being in Parliament without necessarily having to have that period of time, serving at a different level. And I think that works too. But for me, I can say it definitely helped me a lot being a commissioner, getting a much better understanding of the way things worked, not just the way you think things work.
Ramsey MHK Laurie Hooper there, speaking about the grounding, I guess, that being a commissioner gives you before thinking about the House of Keys. Let's just stay with politics, because this week the revamped process for electing members of the Legislative Council springs deftly over its first stage, the application deadline. It's coming up on Thursday, that's the 9th of January. And the invitation for people from all walks of life to apply for the prestigious position has been out there for a few weeks now. However, the numbers who've applied so far is, at present, being kept under wraps, as John Moss explains.
The 4 vacancies whose current term is nearly up are Peter Greenhill, Bill Henderson, Rob Mercer and Kerry Sharp. Their terms don't end until February the 28th, by the way, as the election is on March 4th. There will be an interregnum, but it's likely Manx politics will survive that. Bill Henderson has been a part of Manx politics since Adam was a lad. He was elected in a by-election in 98. He was Minister for Agriculture for 2 years. In 2015, he went upstairs to Ledgco. He's very much a political animal, with, one suspects, his mind never far from issues of the day. He's 63, which was once about the age you became a member of Ledgco, usually moving up from the Keys. Kerry Sharp has enjoyed 2 Ledgco terms, although her first was an abbreviated term of 2 years. Peter Greenhill and Rob Mercer are approaching the end of their first terms. Until names start getting released a little down the line, we don't know how many of the above will be throwing their hats back into the ring. We have a general election next year. It's possible any of the members might wish to follow the route taken by Jane Poole-Wilson and Kate Lord-Brennan and exchange the deep, deep peace of Ledgco for the hurly-burly of the Keys. In Keys Questions late last year, Chris Thomas asked the Speaker, Joan Watson, about the number of names that had been put forward at that time.
Honourable Members, under the procedure adopted by the House in July 2024 and set out in Standing Order 8.2, Any valid application must be circulated by the Secretary of the House to all members as soon as practicable after it has been received. I can confirm that this standing order has been complied with, and further that no invalid applications have been received. Applicants which are sifted out at this initial stage are not to be disclosed to anyone beyond the sifting panel. If we did this, there is a risk that it could deter some people from applying and could be seen as a discourtesy to the dignity of unsuccessful applicants. That being the case, I consider that it would be contrary to the spirit of standing orders to provide, on the public record, a running commentary on the number of applications received.
I understand at the end of last year some 15 names had been put forward. That's not confirmed, but it gives an approximate view of interest to date. LegCo membership basic salary, incidentally, is $71,600 or just over. The original function of LegCo was executive, giving advice to the Lieutenant Governor. But to return to Nostris Temporibus, we should find out the names of those who have secured as required the support of at least 4 MHKs sometime after the applicants' conference on Friday, January the 24th, and the proposed deadline on Thursday, February the 13th. The election sitting is scheduled for March the 4th.
John Moss reporting, and you can find an application form, should you wish, on the Tynwald website. There's a link on our website as well. Just gone 5:20, a group of students from St Ninian's High School are backing the charity Street Child in this year's One World Charity Challenge. Now, this charity helps children in deprived and war-torn areas get an education, along with providing mental health support and emergency aid. The Year 12 students from St Ninian's have been learning about its work and putting together a presentation to show its impact as part of the challenge, which encourages island youngsters to take note of global issues. Emma, Lindy, Lucy, Ella and Freya told Christy how they've been getting on so far.
At the Christmas fair we raised about £100.
Fantastic.
And then we did a Wear Orange Day. So people would wear either a little badge with Street Child logo on it or an orange ribbon and donate some money. And I think that raised about £40 on that day. And we had in school, we had a little lunchtime where we watched a Christmas film after our Christmas dinner. So we brought the rest of our hot chocolate stuff in then, and a few people wanted a hot chocolate while they watched a film. So we made around another £11 then. So
that's brilliant. You do really well with it, and I'm sure there's more to come as well. So, I mean, Ella, this is something that I think must mean an awful lot to each of you doing this, because you're finding out about, as we've heard about this amazing charity doing fabulous things, different parts of the world for children who are certainly in a much more challenging situation than we're used to. I mean, what has it meant to you to be working on this?
Well, a lot of us, we like to take advantage of our education, and we don't see it as something great, whereas these kids, they don't have the same privileges as us. So if we're making a difference just by even helping raise advocacy for them, it still means they can get a bit more education and schools can be funded over in these countries that they're working in.
It sounds like you're quite invested in it. Is this something you'd like to continue sort of maybe being involved with in the future?
I'm not sure if I can see I'd still be involved with it, as it is very time consuming with all the charity events, but it's a really nice thing to do during school.
That's a good point, actually, Freya. It must take up quite a lot of your time doing this.
Yeah, every Tuesday we will all meet in one of the classrooms at our school. So we have about 12 groups in total at our school, which is quite nice. Like we have, I think it's like the most they've had in quite a few years. So it's really nice to see everyone like together working on their projects. So it's quite time consuming, but we do get time to do it, and most people are really into trying to like save time to do it because it is such a, as Ella said, a wonderful thing to do.
Yeah, and it's obviously really affected each of you in a really positive way, which is great. So Lindy, what's next then? What do you do from here?
So between now and February, we're going to be starting to make a presentation where we just come in front of everyone and we talk about what we've done, and we compete against the other 12 groups within our year. And then if we win that, that's on February the 13th. If we win that, then we have an inter-schools competition, which we're preparing for.
That is some of the Year 12 pupils from St Ninian's who were talking to Christy about their chosen charity in the One World Charity Challenge Street Child. It's such a great initiative. There's a lovely video on the Manx Radio Facebook page as well if you want to go and take a look at that. Just reminding you that we know the fire service is still dealing with that incident on the Peel Road here in Douglas. It's a structure fire. You're asked to avoid the area at this time, so the road between the Brown Bobby and Athol Street is closed. We'll bring you further details as soon as we have it. 24 minutes past 5, he is back and he's all relaxed after Christmas. Rob, how are you?
I'm very well, thanks. Happy New Year to you.
Happy New Year to you. So, sports news, what's happening? It's too cold for sport, isn't it?
Well, depends, I suppose. It's a bit dark now as well, I guess. But, OK, starting us off today, Isle of Man tennis player Billy Harris has won his opening match in qualifying for the Australian Open. The 29-year-old beat Japanese player Yuta Shimizu 6-7, 6-4, 6-4 in the first round this morning. Harris's next match will be against Carlos Taberner of Spain tomorrow. He'll need to win 2 more matches for a place in the main draw of the first Grand Slam tournament of the year. Elsewhere, several Isle of Man pro cyclists will take part in this month's Tour Down Under in Australia. Ben Swift, Max Walker, Lizzie Holden and Becky Story have all been confirmed in lineups across the 2 World Tour meetings, which will take place across the 17th to the 26th of January. Holden and Story will compete for their respective teams in the 3-day women's race from the 17th to the 19th, while Swift and Walker will face each other in the men's event from the 21st to the 26th. They're part of a larger contingent of British competitors due to take part, which in the men's race includes defending champion Steve Williams, Geraint Thomas and Oscar Onley. Among the UK riders joining Holden and Story in the women's race will be Josie Nelson, Alice Towers, Isabel Sharp and Monica Greenwood. Some slightly different news when it comes to two-wheeled motorsport. TT star James Hillier has been back up and running at the infamous Dakar Rally throughout today. He's now completed the 203-mile special stage and is now heading to the bivouac location to end the day. It's worth pointing out he still has to cover a total of 199 miles on roads to get there. And just for a bit of perspective, that's the equivalent of driving from Silverstone Circuit to Middlesbrough. Well, the former TT winner, he got off to a tough start at this year's event when he crashed on stage 1 at the weekend, suffering a broken nose. However, on Sunday he was past fit and able to race during today's event. And finally in football, we now know what the first round proper looks like for 2 of the Isle of Man's 2025 competitions. Well, following last Saturday's matches, draws have been confirmed for the first round proper of both this year's ECAP FA Cup and GH Corlett Woods Cup. Among the standout ties in the FA Cup first round, to be played on the first weekend of February, is a meeting of Premier League heavyweights Ayr United and Corinthians, as well as a northern derby between Ramsey Youth Centre and Old Boys and Ramsey. In the Woods Cup, the first phase on the 18th of January, there are just 3 ties. Maloo host Ramsey Youth Centre and Old Boys, Bradham welcome Governors Athletic, and Douglas High School Old Boys are at home to Douglas and District, and you can see the draws in full at manxradio.com.
Thank you very much indeed, Rob. I tell you what, we always knew that motorcycle races were made of stern stuff. Fancy breaking your nose and carrying on. It must be so painful.
I know, and the team have actually thanked one of the fellow riders who was out on the stage as well that stopped at one point just to help him make sure that he was okay to continue. He managed to get to where he needed to be, and then just after a couple of assessments, thankfully, he was past fit and ready to race again. So yeah, made of some stern stuff. And don't forget, so James Hillier, he actually he suffered an injury during last year's event. It truly is a gruelling event, and yet he still went on to complete it. So all the very best to him, and wish him well.
We certainly do, and we'll keep tabs on how he's doing. As far as we're aware, that incident on the Peel Road in Douglas, that fire is still ongoing, so do avoid that area. The road between the Brown Bobby and Athol Street has been closed. And that is all for update this evening. Thank you very much for your company. Coming up next, we've got an Island Life special. It's with John Moss, and it's remembering the Solway Harvester tragedy 25 years on, so that's well worth a listen. We also have another special programme on the same subject coming up with Dave Moore on Thursday. Then after that tonight, Chris Kinley will be here from 6 with Greatest Hits. At 9, it's The Folk Show with John Barker, and then Dave will be here with you from 10 with After Hours. Whatever you're doing this evening, have a good one. Keep up to date with the very latest that's happening news-wise at manxradio.com or follow our social media pages, and I'll be back with you with Man in Line from noon tomorrow. Take care.